myth represents part of a longer story about conservative and right-wing backlash directed at higher education. The right's grumblings that the academy functioned as a breeding ground for anti-Americanism were articulated throughout the 1930s and 1940s by anti-New Deal businessmen lamenting Keynesian economic solutions emanating from the ivory tower. These complaints were perhaps most popularly articulated in the 1950s by students who would become leaders of the post-war conservative movement, William F. Buckley, Jr. and M. Stanton Evans. As Yale students, Bill Buckley and Stan Evans were themselves no strangers to the Ivy League. They were founding members of the Intercollegiate Studies Institute, ISI, then called the Intercollegiate Society of Individualists. The organization was created in 1953 by writers at the Freeman and Human Events magazines and bankrolled by the William Volcker Fund as a foil to the Intercollegiate Socialist Society. With Buckley, the enfant terrible of the right, as its first president, ISI functioned as an intellectual bulwark against a perceived liberal indoctrination on American campuses 2 decades before Wallace's invitation to Dartmouth. After leaving Yale, Buckley and Evans each produced book-length polemics condemning the humanist liberal establishment dominated by progressives in America's oldest institutions, whom they dubbed elitists. In God and Man at Yale, The Superstitions of Academic Freedom, 1951, Buckley eloquently chided the university's hypocrisy in soliciting financial contributions from Christian individualists while persuading the sons of these supporters to be atheistic socialists. In Revolt on the Campus, 1961, Evans echoed these charges against socialism, further complaining that the campus was a world in which a student of conservative inclination found himself badly in need of help, counsel, and information. To provide these services, Buckley and Evans designed a second student organization, one with more temerity and punch than the highbrow ISI. Buckley and Evans identified a small group of apprentices ideal for their project. Some were students who were volunteering alongside movement conservatives to draft Barry Goldwater, the cowboy senator from Arizona, as the Republican presidential nominee. Others were fighting to preserve the unpopular anti-communist loyalty oath requirement for recipients of National Defense Education Act funds. Still more were scouted by right-wing faculty, such as law and economics professor Gordon Tullock at the University of South Carolina, who sensed students' distaste for liberalism in their coursework. Buckley shepherded these protégés with their various grievances to his family estate in Sharon, Connecticut in September 1960. Out of this inaugural gathering came the activist youth organization Young Americans for Freedom, YAF. United by strident anti-communism, Christian moralism, and disdain for bureaucracy and planned economies, these student foot soldiers began a movement, under the direction of Buckley and others, to advance a provocative and antagonistic brand of conservatism before their professors and peers. In this context, George Wallace's invitation to Dartmouth, along with more recent lamentations of wokeism and critical race theory, can be understood as a major battle in conservatives' decades-long war against the academy and the cultural changes that liberal education champions. The account that follows tells how right-wing students of the late 1960s, following the guidance of anti-New Deal elders who sponsored them financially and professionally, participated in an AstroTurf mobilization against a so-called liberal establishment in higher education during their time on campus, an era typically associated with the New Left anti-war and Black Power student movements. It describes how young conservatives, who became known as the New Right in the 1970s, used the skills they learned in college to consciously drive American politics and culture further to the authoritarian right, with the Republican Party as their vehicle. These former students include familiar Republican Party officials and strategists. Newt Gingrich.